What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today, and the road to predict all 136 FBS level college football teams is finally back, and we are now moving on to East Lansing, Michigan. Another team out of the Big Ten Conference. We're going to be talking about the Michigan State Spartans as they're going to look to climb the ladder in the Big Ten this season. My name is Nate Pope, otherwise known as Tailgate Nate. I want to thank you all so much for clicking on this video and for helping to support the channel. If you would like to support it even further, then please do what it says on the banner right below me. Hit that subscribe button, and while you're at it, you might as well ring the bell. Turning on notifications will ensure you don't miss an upload during prediction season, especially not one of your favorite team. I just started my new business in the sports media industry, got a degree on the wall as a sports media graduate. If you want to see all the cool stuff I get to do while still being up to date what goes on this very YouTube channel, you can give me a follow on Twitter or X, whatever your preference to call the platform, and Instagram. It's at tailgatenate29. Feel free to even email me at tailgatenate29@gmail.com. I want to thank you all so much for supporting and interacting with me or the channel in whatever way you may be doing so, and I very much so apologize for the whole situation that happened. I literally was recording this video, and then just like that, power cut out. Couldn't do anything the entire weekend as I was away celebrating the 4th of July. But we're back now. We're going to have a bunch of 3 video days sort of crammed in here together with a couple 2 video days in between. One of 3 videos to come out today. Let's talk about the Michigan State Spartans and their head coach, Jonathan Smith. And yes, if I look red, I am sunburned. I was in the sun pretty much all weekend. But you don't care about that. You want to hear me talk some football. And Michigan State saw some good things last season under new head coach Jonathan Smith. Of course, he built up his alma mater in the Oregon State Beavers. And again, there were some good things to take away from last season. A step forward is expected here in 2025. How do we do preview predictions here on the channel? Well, we are going to go through a roster overview where the offense is going to be over here to the left and the defense is going to be over here to the right at the end of the video. We will go through the Michigan State Spartan football schedule. I'm going to give it a game-by-game preview and prediction, and this video overall will tell you what I think about the Spartans in 2025. Before we do get started, right down below me, some numbers to be aware of. Returning production numbers are according to ESPN, and they do factor in transfer portal additions up to a certain percentage. And then even right down below that, your recruiting and transfer portal ranks for the class of 2025 are according to 24/7 Sports. Now that all that is said and done, let's kick it off with the offense. Brian Lindgren is your offensive coordinator for the Spartans this upcoming season, and you are going to be getting another year of Aiden Childs at quarterback. Last season, the Oregon State transfer following Jonathan Smith over, a very solidly highly recruited quarterback out of high school, had some pretty sizable expectations, and he showed some flashes last season, but the stat line not where I think a lot of Spartan fans wanted to see it from last year. 2,415 yards on 60% completion percentage, had a touchdown to interception ratio of 13-11. So you definitely want to improve that ratio, and I think it will this season, and we're going to dive into why here in just a second. Childs is a guy that also can get outside of the pocket and flash the ability to scramble and make something out of nothing, extend some plays, and run a long run of 26 last year, 225 yards and 3 touchdowns on nearly 100 rushes. And yes, sack yardage is included in that number there as well. He was sacked 30 times last season. So we're going to get back to Aiden Childs. Just put him in the memory bank for one hot second. We are going to get back to him, but I want to talk about the talent that is around him, because it's obvious that Childs needs some progress and needs to take a step forward in the right direction. I'm going to tell you why I think that's pretty likely this season. And it's because the talent around him, for the most part, does get a whole lot better. One place, though, where they are going to need to find some guys is that running back room. Your top 2 rushers both go pro. 649 yards and 2 touchdowns for Kayron Lynch-Adams, and 499 yards and 5 touchdowns for Nate Carter. Both of those guys right around the 4.5 to 5 yards per carry mark. Carter at 4.3, Lynch-Adams at 4.9. So you're going to be losing 2 guys to the NFL. 2 pretty solid running backs out of the Spartan room are gone. However, you are going to get a transfer that is going to add some experience to what otherwise is going to be a pretty young room. Behind this transfer, whose name you see on screen right now, you're going to have a true sophomore in Brandon Tulis, a true sophomore in Mekhi Frazier, and a true freshman in Jace Clarizio. Hopefully, I said that last name correctly. Elijah Tau Tolliver. He's coming over from Sacramento State, one of the better ran FCS programs, where he had a 958 yard, 7 touchdown season last year, averaging 5.2 yards per carry. But it's not just what he can do on the ground. You look at his receiving numbers as well: 38 catches for 317 yards and a pair of touchdowns through the air. So a vital dual threat running back, as I like to refer to them. I'm sure a lot of people throw that terminology around there as well. Again, uh, while you are going to be missing the likes of Lynch Adams and Nate Carter, I think Tal Tolliver, for the most part, is an upgrade over either one of them individually, and bringing that pass catching ability out of the backfield along as well. I just think gives you a piece that you can play around with and do a lot of different things to help Aiden Childs get better and to help this offense get better as a whole as well. So Tal Tolliver will have a young stable of backs, and we'll see who decides to emerge and prove themselves from that. No question to me, though, Tal Tolliver will be that lead back. In the pass catching room, Montori Foster is going to lead the losses in the wide receiver room. Really, really good weapon for him. Led the team in catches last year. Also had 588 yards, which was second on the team, and 3 touchdowns, was tied for the top mark in the room. However, Nick Marsh, a true freshman last season that led the team in receiving, 649 yards and 3 touchdowns, enters this year as a true sophomore, as the best returning piece to this wide receiver room by far. And a new group of transfers is going to be coming in. And I got to tell you, I love what Michigan State and Jonathan Smith did through the transfer portal here. Omari Kelly is coming over from Middle Tennessee. He was a former Auburn Tiger as well, but with the Blue Raiders last year, 869 yards and 4 touchdowns last season. You also bring in Krishawn McCray, a bright spot on a very, very dim light at Kent State last season, 705 yards and 9 touchdowns, as in my opinion, the most talented wide receiver that was in that room last season. Evan Boyd, Rodney Bullard are some other good transfers they bring in, but it's mainly those three guys, Nick Marsh, Omari Kelly, and Krishawn McCray, that are going to be leading this charge. And I think overall, yes, Montori Foster is a big loss. I think overall, it's a little bit of an upgraded wide receiver room that they had last season. That's just my opinion. And then you throw in Jack Velling back into the mix. He's going to return to provide a big boost to the overall scheme, to the overall weaponization of this offense. He is back as your starting tight end this upcoming season. And when you talk about the offensive line, 2 starters are now in the NFL, but a good bulk of portal pieces are going to enter, particularly from the center on through the right side. So Matt Golden, Luka Vincic, hopefully said that last name right, and Connor Moore are all transfers coming in to pair with some of the good young talent that you do have there already. In fact, Matt Golden, projected, at least according to ourlads.com, might be the only senior starting on this offensive line. And then Caleb Carter is back there, projected right now as a second string player at the right guard position, but he's a senior as well. And again, could see some big time minutes coming out of the transfer portal. So I told you I was going to get back to Aiden Childs and tell you why I thought his game was going to improve this season. It's not only because I think Aiden Childs is going to get better in his progression, he's going to naturally take a step forward. I think the talent around him overall gets better, and that's no diss to what Michigan State had offensively last year. I think they had a lot of good pieces. I just think this year it's better. I think Tal Tolliver as the dual threat back is going to be a huge weapon for them. I think that pass catching room with Nick Marsh coming back, a young guy that could be a stud in the Big Ten Conference with 2 big-time transfers. I really like that. I really like Jack Velling coming back, and the offensive line allowing 36 sacks last year. It's just going to get better. I like the pieces they brought in through the transfer portal. I like this Spartan offense overall to take a step up, at the very least a step up, if not multiple, this upcoming season. I think the offense is going to get a whole lot better and a whole lot more consistent. When you talk about Joe Rossi's defense, there are lots of areas the Spartan defense can improve, especially in their disruptiveness of the games. However, last year was a pretty good start. Overall, you take a look at what the team was able to do. The disruptiveness factor, again, has got to improve. 19 sacks last season, forced 11 turnovers. those numbers have got to get better, especially considering the talent and the teams and the caliber of opponent. That's the terminology I was looking for. You're going to be playing here in the Big Ten Conference. And when you start taking a look at the talent, well, it's already not off to a great start. As your sack leader from last season, Chris Bogle, is going to be gone. 4 sacks for him last season. He has exhausted his eligibility. However, pieces are going to move in and out through the transfer portal. You do lose some pretty solid pieces through the portal. You do gain a lot through the portal as well, but there are a ton of returners back. And again, as I've said before, the pass rush has got to improve. Again, a ton of returners coming back. Jalen Thompson and Alex Van Sumeren are going to be back, and pretty much the rest of the 2 deep back there are, or I'd say the rest of the second stringers are going to be returners. However, you do get 2 really big time transfers. Grady Kelly is coming over from Florida State, so a guy coming over from another power school. But then David Santiago, he's a guy that you can play in the linebacker position or on the defensive front. He's an Air Force transfer where he had a really good season for the Falcons last year. I think that is a very big piece coming back. And when you take a look rounding out this front 7 at the linebacking unit, sure, you're going to lose your top 2 linebackers from last season. Always a big loss, especially when you lose your top 2 tacklers off of last year. Jordan Turner, leading tackler with 66 of them last year, is now with the Denver Broncos, and a Spartan legend and Cal Halliday has exhausted his eligibility. No more college football for him after 58 tackles and a sack for him last season. Justin Turner, by the way, 3 sacks, did have a couple of interceptions last season. However, I still think it's going to be a really good linebacking room because of the trio you see over here on screen. Jordan Hall, Darius Snow, Wayne Matthews, all for the most part, had pretty good seasons last year. They're now going to be playing in some bigger roles, which they've earned, and I think they're going to find some tremendous success. I think it's going to be really hard for opponents to break through this second level in this Michigan State defense. Secondary-wise, you do lose Charles Brantley. He will be your biggest defensive back loss, among some other names, but Brantley being the biggest. 27 tackles, led the team with 7 passes defended, and led the team with 3 interceptions, one of which he returned for a 100-yard pick six. Yes, that is true. Vital players are going to be coming back into the secondary, though. Again, you do lose some other pieces here and there, but you're going to be getting back a young piece who I think is talented, and Chance Rucker. Jeremiah Hughes is back. Malik Spencer is a massive return in that safety room. Nakai Martinez is also coming back, and you get a transfer coming over here that's projected to start at corner for you in Joshua Eaton. 5 passes defended and 27 tackles with Texas State last season, as well as some other transfer portal pieces you can talk about and some other notable returners in there as well. Special teams are an important part of the game, and kickers are people too. Ryan Eckley back to punt, while a new kicker is going to take over the reins. A couple of younger pieces that are going to be battling it out for the kicking duties this season. Even behind Ryan Eckley, you do have an experienced piece in Carson Voss that can do some punting for you as well. So overall, when I take a look at this team, already told you, I think the offense is going to improve because Childs takes a step forward and the pieces around him do improve. Defensively, yeah, you got to replace a couple really big pieces. I don't think it's going to be much of a problem in the linebacking room to be able to do so. However, I do believe the defensive front, you're going to need some guys to step up. Hopefully those transfers fit in well. Defensive back-wise, you're going to need some pieces to step up. Hopefully those transfers fit in well. I think the defense overall can see a step forward this season, but the competition in the Big Ten this year is going to be really, really stiff. And the Michigan State Spartans do have a pretty rough schedule this upcoming season that you see right over here. Take a look at the 2025 schedule for the Michigan State Spartans for the green and white. But before we take a look at that, give it a preview and prediction. Make sure my hands are in frame. Let's move on down there to some odds courtesy of the good people over at FanDuel. Again, just some good context to show you how good the odds makers think the Spartans are going to be this year. Not me telling you to go place your money in any way or fashion. Plus 11,000 odds to win the conference. Yeah, it's going to take a lot to get past some of the big boys up towards the top of the ranks, like Ohio State, Oregon, and even some of the middle ground. That's going to be pretty solid as well. 41,000 to win the national championship. Not as low as some teams, or I should say, not as high as some teams, but definitely not as low as others there as well. We all realize it'll take a lot for Michigan State to go win the national championship. 5.5 is that over under win total. Odds maker showing you they're teetering right on the edge of bowl eligibility. Let's see if they can get there. I think they do start off this schedule with 3 wins. Western Michigan is going to be a little bit of a challenge. I think they're going to be a solid team this season, but overall, I don't anticipate Michigan State having much trouble with the in-state team out of the Mid-American Conference on a Friday to open up the season. That should be a win for Michigan State. And then I also do believe they're going to be able to beat Boston College here as well. Boston College is the team that does lose a lot of pieces from last year in pretty much every aspect, most notably led by their quarterback in Tommy Castellanos, who is now going to be gone and off to Florida State. Grayson James is a pretty solid and experienced player that does return at the quarterback position, but you're having to replace a ton of pieces everywhere. And while I still like some of the pieces defensively, I just don't think the offense is going to carry Boston College forward that much this season. Michigan State does get this one at home. Bill O'Brien, solid coach. Definitely we'll give him that, but I don't think the Spartans will have much trouble with the Eagles there at home. And then you move on to an FCS level program in Youngstown State. Youngstown State, usually one of the better FCS programs. I think they're kind of teetering on that playoff edge, at least as of late. Michigan State should have no trouble with them at home. So getting 3 wins, getting Aiden Childs comfortable, looking at his progression, getting these new weapons comfortable offensively and defensively within the system, and then bam, that snap was terrible. That was better. Wow, it was way better. And then, bam, you are right into the thick of things when you get into conference play. You got to go on the road in the Coliseum and play the USC Trojans. Good news, though, if you sweep that non-conference schedule, you only got to win 3 conference games. And there are, in my opinion, 3, if not more, very winnable conference games. I just don't think USC is one of them. That is a team that I think is going to massively improve from last season. The defense already took a step in the right direction last season. It's projected, at least in my opinion, to take another big step forward this upcoming year. You take a look at their quarterback situation. Jaden Maeva is a guy that can do it all, very much so a dual threat style guy. Actually, I don't know if that's accurate. All right, so I'm going to rephrase myself a little bit. He's not a super dual threat guy, but he does have the ability to get outside of the pocket and create something dynamic with his legs. So I'll just rephrase myself and correct it based off of that point. Again, not a guy that's going to run all over you from the quarterback position, but then But then USC's also got some solid talent surrounding him. I think they got some good wide receiver pieces. I think they did well in the transfer portal in their running back room. And again, you expect that defense to take another step forward in the right direction this season. So at USC, I think that's going to prove to be a loss there for Michigan State. And I also think on the road against Nebraska, really tough place to play. Been to that stadium, Memorial Stadium, many times. And Nebraska is not only a really fun environment, it's really hard for opponents to a Cornhusker team that, hey, year 3, right? You look at Matt Rule, year 3 at Temple, exploded. Year 3 at Baylor, exploded. This is year 3 at Nebraska, and I do think a sizable jump is going to happen. Dylan Raiola is only going to get better. They did wonders in the transfer portal, especially in their wide receiver room with Neziah Hunter and Dane Key. It is Emmett Johnson's backfield. I felt like he was the most talented piece in that room last season. The defense wants to be more aggressive this year, and they got a ton of nice returning talent and possibly one of the better secondaries that the Big Ten Conference will see this season. I think they're going to be able to shut down this wide receiver room here in Nebraska. Overall, offensively might be a little bit too much to handle in that realm as well. So, okay, you start off with 3 wins, you lose your next 2, starting to go downhill a little bit, but throughout those 2 games, I just think those are 2 tough road environments to play in. You get to come back home, settle in. By the way, you do get a bye week in between USC and Nebraska there as well, so that's going to help you a little bit, but you come back home against UCLA, and what could end up proving to be a matchup type game. These 2 teams could prove to have fairly similar styles and pretty similar records up to this point. I do believe that Michigan State is the better football team, and I think they will prove that when they beat UCLA. Now, UCLA might have the better quarterback now that Nico Iamaleava is there coming over from Tennessee, but to me, not a question about how much, or I should say, how good Nico is and how much Nico statistically is going to improve from last season. I think both of those things are true. I think he will statistically improve. I think Nico's a pretty good quarterback. I got a lot of questions about the overall talent surrounding him offensively. And even if that gets ironed out, the UCLA defense has a lot to do so with that same terminology. They got a lot to figure out. They got a lot of pieces to fill, a lot to improve on from last season. And I just don't see everything clicking at least all the time for UCLA. And they're going to be one of the bottom teams in the Big Ten this year. That's my opinion. I think Michigan State capitalizes on that. They're able to beat UCLA. Another tough stretch of games coming up right here at Indiana and versus Michigan. I do think you lose both of these. At Indiana, folks, Hoosier football is not going to go away. As long as Kurt Signetti is there and they got an awesome transfer coming in through the transfer portal. Fernando Mendoza is a guy that I like a whole ton, and I think it's going to be a stud within this system. You get your lead returning weapon, Elijah Surratt, among many other names, to come back to that room. Running back pieces have been there, done that with Kurt Signetti before. Defensive pieces, while you lose a lot of depth, you bring in some really good transfers, just like you did last season, and most of your heavy hitters from last season, most notably Aiden Fisher, are going to be back to that defense. The schedule does get harder, so we'll see how Indiana navigates that, but I think they showed us a lot last season, and they're still going to be a pretty darn good football team this upcoming season. I like Indiana, and I like them to beat Michigan State. I also like Michigan to beat Michigan State, even though this rivalry matchup is going to be held in Spartan Stadium. Michigan, I think, is just going to improve in a lot of facets this year. Maybe, if anything, their defense takes a tiny step back, but I just don't see that. This is a defense that might not have the grade A star power that they usually have had with Aiden Hutchinson, Will Johnson, and some of the other names that we've seen play at Michigan over the past couple of seasons. This is the Michigan team that might have more NFL draft picks, not more first rounders, more overall draft picks on the defensive side than they've ever had. At least the Michigan people around Ann Arbor will answer it that way. Bryce Underwood is an immediate upgrade to anybody that Michigan could have thrown out there at the quarterback position last season. The wide receiver room is going to be bringing in some portal pieces that are going to look to return to 2023 form, but still have some pretty high upside. The wide receiver room is going to get better. And while, yeah, replacing Colston Loveland's going to be hard, and while replacing Donovan Edwards and Kalel Mullings is going to be difficult, Justice Haynes is a stud, and they got a lot of other young pieces that back there that are studs. Michigan's going to be a really tough out for a lot of people this season, and I do think that Sparty is one of those teams that falls short. They could make it competitive as Michigan State continues to improve and get better. Michigan, to me, I think is going to be a little bit too physical, a little bit too tough, and Michigan beats Michigan State. This road game against Minnesota, to me, this is the game that hinges on that line if you make a bowl game or not. I think if you win this game, you get to a bowl game. I think if you lose it, especially with the way I'm predicting the schedule to go up to this point, I think you're going to see some trouble, and Michigan State's going to have to pull off something crazy to be able to get into a bowl game. I think they go on the road here and win this game. Now, Minnesota is a team that is also going to play hard. They are really, really well coached with PJ Fleck. You got a ton of returning talent on that defensive front, which is going to make life really difficult for this offensive line and this running game that's looking to try to improve. But I think the offensive line is going to get better, even though this Minnesota defensive front, I think, can create a lot of problems. And they are returning some good pieces in the secondary as well. This is one of those games to me where I just see Michigan State finding that extra gear. They find that extra sense of motivation, whatever it is you want to call it. I think they find that extra little play. The bounce of the ball goes their way. Just one of those games that you look down in your gut and say, ooh, I got a feeling about this one. I think Michigan State goes on the road, gets a big win against the Minnesota Golden Gophers, and then you only got to win one more game out of these three, which is pretty attainable. It's not going to be Penn State, however. Drew Aller, Nick Singleton, Katron Allen, you have three weapons coming over through the transfer portal that finally give you some downfield threats, especially Trevor Pena and Devontae Ross. Kyron Hudson, not a bad name coming in there either. The Penn State defense, yes, you lose two really important pieces in Abdul Carter and Kobe King. This is the defense now led by the one, or maybe not people can argue about that. I think he is, but at the very least, one of the best defensive coordinators in the country, and that's Jim Knowles. The ability to disguise blitzes is going to serve Penn State really well. Michigan State's not beating Penn State, even though that one is a home game, and I don't think they're going to go on the road and beat Iowa either. Iowa in Kinnick, don't ever count them out, man. That's a really tough place to play, a really tough place to go win in, and Iowa defensively, I think they're still going to be fine. Now, offensively, I think a lot of position groupings can take a step back, such as their run game, and I don't know if the talent is there to surround incoming transfer from South Dakota State, Mark Gronowski, who we've seen do amazing things at the FCS level, but Iowa is a really tough team to play, especially at home, and they still are pretty darn well coached by Kirk Ferentz. I do think Michigan State will beat Maryland. Again, that Minnesota game is the hinge point for me. I think every other game is pretty, maybe not easy, but pretty straightforward to try to predict here. I think Michigan State's going to be a team this season that's going to beat the teams they're supposed to, lose to the teams that, they don't really have a shot against, and then it's up to Minnesota, UCLA. Those are the hinge point games, the matchup type games. I think they win more than they need to. I think they get to a bowl game this year, and that next step is taken in the Jonathan Smith era. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Remember to play hard but tailgate harder. See all you guys in the next video. Two more today. Goodbye.